recorded.
I think we should start. Vijay,
Okay.
go ahead.
Namaskar. Good morning, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you have joined from. It's my great pleasure to be part of this webinar and to moderate a panel on a very interesting topic that we have today, which is about the importance and of digital infrastructure for rural schools. It's a very exciting topic, because we know that in the last 1 year how things have changed over the pandemic, and the new word called phygital is becoming popular as physical plus digital. And today what we are going to do is we're going to discuss this among a very experienced set of panelists. And see, this topic can be discussed with anybody. Everybody would have an opinion about the digital infrastructure. But this panel particularly has hands-on experience of how this is going to work and what exactly does it mean. And we're going to cover a variety of things. So I want to just start off first with an introduction to OSAT. And the format will be that, the three panelists will have certain views about what OSAT is doing and why OSAT and things like that. And then subsequently, we will have question and answers. So you please feel free to ask a question on the Q&A on the webinar. And at the end of we have a time slot at the end, and I'm going to ask those questions to the panelists. Thank you. So enjoy this webinar, and it's a pretty interesting topic and a very important topic from all of us, for all of us, so who are connected with India in some form. First, let me start by giving a quick introduction to OSAT and what we do here. I am one of the board members of OSAT here in California. My name is Vijay Malur. And what we do at OSAT is that we build physical school infrastructure in rural India. So there are lots of government schools in India where the buildings are quite dilapidated, and there are no proper classrooms, there are no proper bathrooms, there are no probably bathrooms separated for girls and boys. These are all kind of impediments which kind of hinder children going to school and studying in a safe environment, and also for the parents to send their children comfortably to get them educated. So this is a very, very important problem. It's a very difficult problem. It's a very prevalent problem. And not too many organizations have tried to sort of address this problem. And we are proud to say that OSAT has been very bold, and since last several years, a decade plus, we have sort of created this single mission of providing very safe education in rural schools. That's the mission. And OSAT itself is a registered nonprofit organization both in US and India. We are a 501c3 corporation and a similar one, certified nonprofit in India. So we are completely voluntary driven organization. That means every dollar that we receive as funding for a project goes directly into into the project, and there is zero overheads. And it's been run by a fantastic set of individuals. Some of them you will hear today on this panel. And this was initially started by entrepreneurs and tech executives here in California and in India, and it's kind of grown substantially. So today, as we stand towards the last quarter of 2021, we have completed 44 different school projects in 7 different states. These are completely built or remodeled and handed over and running very well. So there are 44 of these schools already operational, and there are 13 right now under construction. So which probably in the course of next several months, they will be handed over to the completed and handed over to the individual school authorities or the government authorities. And there are also other 16 of these schools we have vetted out, but we are waiting for funding. That's one area where a lot of you can contribute, and I will talk about this at the end of this discussion as to how people can participate in this process. So with that introduction to OSAT, I want to introduce this esteemed panel. We have 3 gentlemen here as part of this panel, and the first one I'm going to introduce is Paddu Melnahalli. Paddu is the president of OSAT here in the US, and he has been a volunteer. He has done a tremendous amount of work in this OSAT projects. The second gentleman that I'm going to introduce is Vadiraj Bhatt. Wadi is the trustee of OSAT in India, and he is the founder and trustee of OSAT in India. And he oversees all the various projects and evaluates, and so pretty much like he's on the ground looking at everything that's happening on OSAT constructions and so on. And then I also have Sudhir. Sudhir is the project manager for this digital infrastructure that we are going to be talking about. And he has got some very interesting case studies and pilot results that he's going to be sharing with. And, so as I mentioned, this is a panel which, we are not talking in the air. We are not thinking about how, whether digital infrastructure means something. Do we really need it? It's not that, these are people who really have the hands-on experience and on the ground feedback from children, from students, from parents, and have seen every positives and negatives that could come out of this sort of an initiative. So it will be very interesting to hear from them. So please join us. With that, I want to step into asking Paddu the very first question. As I mentioned, Paddu, so phygital is something, everybody is talking about, in every other area. I want to understand and hear from you as to what is the relevance of this digital infrastructure from a rural school's point of view. Is this important? How do they perceive? Why is this important now? And what is the longevity of these things, right? So I want you to get your perspective on the importance of this digital infrastructure for rural schools, please.
Thank you very much, Vijay. Good evening and good morning to everybody. My name is Paddu Melnahalli. I am President USA OSAT. Warm welcome to you again for this webinar. As Vijay mentioned, there is so many things which is happening with the OSAT and also helping the rural education, especially in India, to gain the required confidence for the students and also provide them with the proper schooling infrastructure for them to go to school and then get the education done. Next few minutes, I will try and paint a picture of rural India village situation and also a need for a good and robust physical and digital infrastructure as a whole. Let me share a few slides and then let me talk through the picture of USA with OSAT infrastructure there in rural India. So you can see this slide.
Go ahead. Yes.
So okay. If you think of the OSAT and its role that OSAT is playing today, those of us that have been fortunate to have an education can certainly appreciate the value as one of the key contributors to the life that we have built for ourselves. So that way, education is a super important thing. We also know that kids growing up in the rural areas of India do not have the same opportunity that kids in the cities and the suburbs have. Knowing that India opens up the door for a better oneself, help build a better society, a better nation, and a better world. So it is our important duty as citizens and the parents that we need to provide a better and good education for our children, whether they are in the rural area or in the suburb area or in the urban area. Think of a parent, especially in the rural areas.
Padhu,
Yes.
am I seeing a split screen? Can you make it full screen? Is that me or just others?
Others are also seeing the split screen only, so slides.
Yeah. Can you make it
Okay.
full screen, please? Yeah.
Okay.
And just as a FYI, I think all the guests can post, attendees can post questions in Q&A. There's a Q&A box. Yeah, it's still split screen now, Padhu.
It's in presentation mode, Padhu. What
Yeah.
we are seeing is in presentation.
Now
This is better now. This is correct.
Now you're good. Go ahead, Padhu.
Thanks, Wadi. So I was talking about the rural education system where think of a parent, their worry and the nightmare if there is a crumbling school building is the only one available in and around their place, which is affordable school for them, and they can be able to send their kids into that particular school. And the parents' worry is always about their kids studying in that crumbling building. That is where most of the parents' worry manifest, and then they think that during the rainy season, for example, or especially the girls, they don't have proper infrastructure in those schools. The parents' worry is always that even the most basic amenities, when it is missing, so their worry is that safety of their kids, and they try to use those as an escape or those as a reasons where the kids will be either missing the schools or missing the importance of the school education, and they try to help out the parents in other work. That is how most of the cycle of illiteracy starts in the rural areas, where the parents stop sending children to school, which results in the child labor. Lack of toilets and other basic amenities in the school infrastructure, especially for girl children, and they will quit the school and they become vulnerable for the exploitation. And the cycle of illiteracy starts from healthcare and other basic needs missing, lack of opportunity for the education, and then that causes the poverty lines to go up, missing the jobs, no housing, all those things kind of comes together, and then the cycle of illiteracy is play a role in their life. So is it only the physical infrastructure? Probably so far what we have seen is the physical infrastructure where the school buildings, classrooms, all those things were necessary. And nowadays, the modern world also demands quite a bit from the digital infrastructure as well. I will touch base on some of those aspects in the next slide. So suppose if you look at the numbers just to give a perspective of where the physical infrastructure is and then the need for the digital infrastructure. Just in one state, about 40,000 schools, they don't have a proper building. Close to 20,000 schools, they are missing the important aspects of the playgrounds and other important things. More than 10,000 schools, they have no proper the fencing or the compound walls and other things to protect the sites. More than 2,000 schools, they are missing or no limited toilet facilities. And the schools with no libraries, very many, schools with no power supply, very many. And all these things is what causing the overall situation is very bad for the rural India especially. And we are all working towards, including the government, to improve the infrastructure wherever is possible. And into the mix of all these things, the recent COVID-19 pandemic added a lot more difficulties for the students as well as for the parents. As we all know, there is a challenge already, and on top of those challenges, the rural situation in rural India situation, especially from the education point of view, created some opportunities and also posed some of the challenges. If you look at the opportunity point of view, most of the rural India today have a very good mobile connectivity. And with the pandemic and the COVID-19 situation comes up, they started using some of those infrastructure, the mobile connectivity infrastructure, and getting the smartphones and other things is increased. And if you look at the other situation where most of the population in India is living in the rural areas, there is a low skill development poses the growth for those rural India, as well as if you compare the digital acceptance and the education knowledge base improvement with the internet connectivity and all the knowledge base that the internet is providing, there is a gap which getting developed from the rural versus the urban cities. The gap is widening. With the pandemic also, we have seen in the OSAT schools, there are a lot of kids. We have seen the child labor. We have seen the early the child marriages. We have also seen these are all in the OSAT built schools that we have seen that the students are missing the interaction and engagement with the teacher. So they are all manifesting some of the gaps with the education. First of all, there was a gap without the proper infrastructure. On top of that, with the pandemic and the COVID-19, the gap is widened quite a bit. And now, with the globalized world, the demand for catching up on the technology, catching up on the increased digital awareness is causing both opportunity as well as a situation that we need to deal with. And one of the things OSAT realized is, how do we really bridge this gap between the urban and the rural India? And if you look at some of the challenges, as I said, so there is a robust technology infrastructure which is needed for the education to go in the rural areas. And there is a lack of trust with the parents and with the teachers, the way of learning, awareness. So we just need to really build those awareness and the education. That is where OSAT, we're going to talk about it, some of those awareness and education that we are trying to build. And also parents are worried that the digital addictions with the phone may increase, which will cause some problems. And affordability of digital assets like the smartphones, the computer, the internet servers, all those things is also a challenge in the rural India. So with these things, what I'm trying to summarize it is, rural India is very important aspect. There are already the challenges with respect to the physical infrastructure. The pandemic and the COVID-19 has caused the entire situation into a lot more opportunity driven as well as a lot more concerns for the parents and the teachers and the overall education system. And opportunity point of view, OSAT is anyway doing the physical infrastructure, and then we are thinking about how do we really give an equal importance for the digital infrastructure for these rural areas where we can get the required education for the rural India in a way. So this actually tells the need and the requirement of this infrastructure, which is inevitable if you want to really meet the modern demand, modern world's demand with respect to the internet. So Vijay, this is something that I just took some time to elaborate some of these needs and wants and the requirements, and then back to you.
Thanks, Padhu. So that was pretty helpful to understand, that being on the ground, doing physical infrastructure, you have the best ability to understand the digital needs and how this can be implemented as well. So I can completely see how OSAT is in a great position to bring out the right type of a model for creating this digital infrastructure. But for the, I'm also so glad, so that Wadi and Sudhir have personally taken so much of responsibility to go pilot these projects, figure out all the hurdles that are there, convince people, and figure out exactly what is needed and to come up with this, right? So that's fantastic. But Wadi, I want to ask you, so for the benefit of all the OSAT patrons that are there, as well as for new people who just heard that we have been always in this physical infrastructure, creating physical infrastructure, right? I want to ask you this question. Why OSAT, is looking at digital? So while we have been for several decades plus, focused on the physical infrastructure for schools, alongside, why did we add digital? What are your perspective and what are you seeing as an opportunity and how this is going to be long lasting, right? So I'd love to hear your perspectives on that, Buddy.
Thank you, Vijay. Thank you. And good morning, good evening, I don't know, wherever you are, all the audience, thank you very much. It's a very relevant question. People ask, why did we switch to digital? The underlying principle is that, remember, we are an organization focused mainly on basic infrastructure. Infrastructure in good old days was brick and mortar, where children can come, learn, and we built so that it lasts long for more than 40, 50 years to come. So that's how we created a safe environment. But we also identify the changes that are happening today, even with our national education policy, where children can learn anywhere. Given that and the mass adoption of this digital learning, we felt that the rural children are left behind even by a larger margin. By and large, they are already behind. Now with digital onslaught that is happening in urban area, rural children are completely left on their own without any guidance. So we felt that the ultimate aim is to make sure that these children learn in a safe environment and the learning happens. So if that is the case, we also need to create this digital infrastructure. Again, remember, it's a word infrastructure. We will highlight exactly what we mean infrastructure so that it acts as a framework for the next 40, 50 years to come. That's our focus. We're not wants to trust on what the education content and whatnot. I request Padhu to share a few slides that we prepared in light of that, and we will explain exactly what this means. We call this as ODiSI. Since OSAT was initially founded by a bunch of guys who are more into art and dance, music, whatever. So we thought ODiSI is the right one for this infrastructure, which is nothing but OSAT Digital School Infrastructure. In the next slide, I'll explain what are the current state of affairs in terms of digital infrastructure. So if you look at today, the digital infrastructure mainly has all its components in one way or the other. In many of you must have heard, hey, there is a smarts class. What's the big deal about it, right? But the smarts class is actually And there is, they have laptops, they have, tabs, they have, all these contents that are coming in. The problem is all of them are addressing, the literacy in a very specific way. If you just take Smart Class gives you a tablet and a TV and whatnot, and children are supposed to learn on their own, or teachers are supposed to spend some time making them learn, but it's not really fitting into their pedagogy, day-to-day learning. And then the biggest challenge, other thing is that it just remains operational for a while, and then something breaks down. Obviously, these are all technology gadgets. Something can definitely go wrong, and after that, nobody knows how to fix it. And what happens is that finally it gets into a shell. Now, it has caused heartburn to a lot of people. In many schools that we spoke to, they start with a very enthusiastic activity, but then it just goes into a cupboard because once it is broken, nobody knows how to fix it. So there has always been a very sparse effort in terms of a disconnected effort to fix this digital divide. So we thought we need to come out with a comprehensive mechanism of addressing this and fit that into their day-to-day learning pedagogy. And that is the only way we feel that is seen as a success. Next slide, please. Now, so what we want is, we took 4 people, four stakeholders, what we thought. One is teachers, students, and government providers. So these are the 3 key participants in the learning process. We want to make sure that each of them have an outcome that fits their day-to-day learning. And also for government and providers, it is a way to fund and really see whether the learning is happening or not. Many times government is extremely cautious about spending on infrastructure or capital expenses because most of the time outcome is not very clear. They are very hesitant to spend money on just for physical infrastructure. Physical infrastructure includes the digital physical infrastructure as well. But there is plenty of content available as of today. This is not a problem that we wanted to solve. Plenty of contents. There are Khan Academy, a lot of contents. So we thought we built an integrated solution which brings all these posts together in the cloud-enabled deployment and provide for each of them an ability to participate and fit that into their day-to-day management. Let me show what that is next. So if you look at it, we have not reinvented, a whole lot of things. There is already something called Google Classroom, which is free and which is given to a lot of people, and already it's being used in many, many schools, especially private schools. So what we took is, we took Google Classroom as a delivery mechanism, which is in the cloud. And then we had all the contents from either YouTube, Diksha, or whatnot, whoever is the content provider, because we are extremely open in terms of the content. We are not the ones who are providing content. Content is already available. Or even teachers can actually put their own contents now. Now with the mobile phone that is coming and everybody is very active on WhatsApp and all of this kind of things, teachers are fairly well versed with how to use mobile phones. So they actually can record a class and then put that into a class schedule for a specific school, for a specific grade, and then deliver that in the Google Classroom. And then Google Classroom, then that class along with an assignment goes into a student, and students watches that video, learns that content, and then responds to that assignment. Now, once that assignment happens, teacher gets to see how they have learned, and then not only teacher gets to see, everyone else gets to see around them to see how that it is, whether they have participated, how much time they have spent, all of that. Now, based on this is a closed loop. We'll start to get a picture on how the kids are absorbing it. And by the way, this is their day-to-day learning. This is not new. They're not learning MS Word. They're not learning programming. They're not learning any of those fancy stuff. They are learning a biology lesson on a butterfly. Yes, that's exactly what they're supposed to learn. And that's been delivered on this Google Classroom as part of their day-to-day learning. Meaning the teachers can teach something in the class and then let that be delivered as a Google Classroom for the children to watch. Children can watch on their own, at their own pace, any number of times and answer that quiz any number of times. So this, effective learning is happening how many ever times that they can walk through. Again, this is not a platform to evaluate how good they are. That's exactly not what we don't want to do. We want to know how they are learning. Ultimately, are they really learning? So given this, and then by the way, a lot of children, their parents, they already have mobiles. The real good learning kids, especially one with a lot of just to learn, they are already ability to find this in their own, parents' mobile phone or wherever it is. They just go download this app and then start to use it. So we are able to identify students who are weak. We are able to identify who are so strong and whatnot. And now the beauty of it is going to be revealed in the next few slides. Can I go to the next one, please? So this is the ODiSI Bundle. So what is ODiSI Bundle? We have a laptop where teachers actually create these lessons as part of their day-to-day learning and deliver it in the Google Classroom as after the class, or even if they don't come to the class, especially during COVID. As you can see, they are all sitting on a rooftop and going through this learning as if it's their day-to-day school, right? Because this is connected. We have 4G, by the way. 4G is really good for occasionally connected, so it can download all this content, then they can play on their offline on their tab. So, and we have used the actual open content. Diksha is a MHRD, a vetted and approved content. So that can go on this YouTube, Khan Academy, any content. And we will also come back to it saying that we can also include the third-party apps in this. But by the way, this is completely secure. As you can see in the rightmost side, you see a class, how it is delivered to student. It has a 7 mathematics. By the way, it can be also in their vernacular language. As you can see, it is Rekegadu Mattu Konagalu in Kannada. That means you can actually localize it and all of that. So that they walk through and then they enter their details and then they start to respond to the quiz. So we will know exactly how they are learning. And this particular tab that we are giving to students is completely secure. We kind of monitor it. Sudhir is going to show exactly and to a level that we can support all the activities that is happening. If the tab is broken or battery is down, or if unwanted apps are installed, or security, everything can be monitored. So it is not an app that they can go and watch movies. Absolutely not. Right? It is fully secure. We know exactly what it is happening in that, and we control it and we support it. So that's the kind of model that we wanted to create. Next slide, please. Padu? Yeah. So now I'll come back to the stakeholders. As we said, there are 4 stakeholders: students, teachers, parents, and government and providers. Students especially, this has to be we felt that 5th to 10th grade is where we need to intervene, because we don't want to mess up with the toddlers and they have to learn. And we strongly believe we don't have right now any data suggesting that digital intervention is good at that age. But 5th to 10th, it's a good way for them because they are on their own. They are able to kind of grasp better. So it is something that fits into their own day-to-day learning. And we are giving it on a ruggedized tab. It's easy to use, simple, and they learn amazingly fast. I mean, you can see some of the results that Sudhir is showing. We provide a good ruggedized platform and they good connectivity, at least to download offline and then run with it. And the teacher essentially incorporates it to make their delivery of their lessons better. That means they don't have to spend a lot of time in the classroom, but they can spend on children who are known to be slow learners, because the platform lets them know which concept they are not learning, which are they get stuck. Because instead of thinking everybody is equal, they can deliver the basic and then they can start to look at the individual child and start to kind of dedicate their time into making sure that they learn better. Now, the parents, they don't have to worry about what should I buy. I think this is the biggest challenge now. Just now I heard that worldwide there is a big scarcity of laptops because every parent has gone to buy a laptop. And this is really sad because you don't need a cannon to kill a fly. You don't need really a laptop for them to learn. All you need is a platform where they can learn these kind of online, especially at the lower grade. Now, for government and providers, We wanted to create a model saying that it's not a capital expense. It should be a per child, expense that government can, very well can capable of funding through a subscription model. It is like, a service as a subscription. You are, serving, and we'll explain you in the next slide. So we really wanted to kind of address all the stakeholders so that it fits organically into their operational model. Next slide, please. So now the important thing, as I said, is subscription. How do I make it subscription model? Now we know that there is hardware. Again, as I said, it's an open system. We are not wanting to create a system that is rigid, because it will die if we were to make it rigid now in another 5 or 10 years, because technology keeps on improving. So we made an open system. It can be any software, any hardware, but fits into the framework of active learning, which is fit into their pedagogy, and then gets delivered, and then we have an ability to measure. So right now we pick Google Classroom as a software, but tomorrow it could be Teams on Microsoft and whatnot, as long as they provide that functionality. We don't care, right? And we want to be open. Today we have a lab, a tab. Tomorrow it could be anything. And networking could be, again, it's a 4G or a hub or a 5G tomorrow, whatnot. But the most key aspect is the system integrator. The system integrator, some who actually takes the responsibility of getting this hardware, procuring this hardware, getting this software, integrating it, along with not only integrating it, delivering this to the teachers, training them, and supporting them during the onboarding, and following that onboarding, constantly monitor the progress of the child, and to help them in terms of the content and all sorts of things, in terms of learning. And at the same time, they are also, wants to support all the devices. Essentially, if a device goes bad or whatnot, they are the ones to go help them fix and take the responsibility of owning that piece of hardware instead of a school owning it. So this means they are paid per child to do this. And for them, it's a continuous stream of revenue. But then that is justified because the learning is happening, and the government or the providers can really see whether the learning is happening or not. So that's the model that we wanted to create. And as an OSAT, we want to be the keepers of this framework going forward, upgrade the standards, bring in new technology, innovate it, and ensure that this is presented. We want to act as auditors, because we're already in touch with 2 governments, one in Karnataka, one in Odisha, where they are shown interest. So when they implement it, we want to be the gatekeepers of whether the effective learning is happening or not. So that's the overall picture, Vijay. I know I've spoken a lot. I hope I have conveyed the message.
Thank you, Wadi. So this was wonderful. See, first off, not only is OSAT thinking about digital infrastructure alongside our mission of building schools, but the quality of thinking also came through very well in the way you spoke about, because especially coming from the tech industry, what we call as reinventing the wheel is so often done, where as soon as you say we're creating digital infrastructure, the first thought goes, how many software developers, what software are we writing? And clearly OSAT hasn't gone in that direction. You've made use of all the available tools and technologies, and made it thought about when I saw you said content, right? That's a very smart thinking, so that's a very important play there, and involving the government. So it really showed us how deep and how comprehensive the thinking is, in creating this infrastructure. So thank you for enlightening us on that side. One thing is, it's great that we are thinking about the digital infrastructure. Obviously, everybody wants to see what's the proof in the pudding, right? So I'd like to ask Sudhir. So I know you've been managing, coordinating with the governments as well as the schools, and running some pilot programs. Very, very curious for us to understand, what did you learn from that? How did this work? Please talk about that, Sudhir, if you can.
Sure. Thanks, Vijay. Good morning, good day, everyone. My name is Sudhir Hulmane. As a response to the COVID during wave 1, when we realized that these things are happening, we started working, and there was a lot of experimentation and learning. So I would like to share some of those learnings and outcomes we have till date. Padhu,
Sudhir,
can
if
you
I
share?
may interrupt for 1 second, I just
Sure.
also wanted to let know the audience that you can ask questions on the Q&A panel. If you just look around, like you will see a tab called Q&A, and you can go in there and ask any questions. So post Sudhir's talk, I'm going to be asking some of the questions. Of course, I've already got like some questions sent to me. But if you would like to ask this panel any questions, please feel free to ask on that Q&A panel. Thank you. Continue.
Thanks, Vijay. Sure. So I would like to share some of the big wins we had till date, and then and walk through some of the solution aspects as well. Madhu, can you bring on the first slide? Thank you. So we have actually, during the first wave, we have completed one round of proof of concept during the previous academic year. So we started with 2 schools, one school in Malur Taluk and another school in Hunsur Taluk. And one was a completely Kannada medium school, and the Malur school had both English and Kannada medium. So we completed the POC during the first wave. And then right now we are running a at scale POC to prove that this is really scalable, and we are doing it in 11 schools, both again in Malur and Hunsur taluks. Some of them are high schools that are still 10th grade. Some of them are again higher primary schools. Some are very large schools, some are very small schools, and again combination of medium of instruction. So the pictures that you see on the slide is the previous Karnataka Education Minister, Suresh Kumar, who was part of the inaugural, and he took stock of what we were doing. And the left bottom picture is the classroom in which students demonstrated how they use this ODiSI framework. As Wadi mentioned, we wanted to be really content agnostic. So any third-party content should be hosted and should be used. So an opportunity from Westerman UK, their product is called MangaHigh. It's a mathematics gaming trial. So we, without knowing anything about that software, we let those that content provider to use our infrastructure. And this totally unknown school in Malur came second all over South Asia, where there were 250 other participating schools all over South Asia, not just India or Karnataka. These were schools all over South Asia, all over India and Bangladesh, Nepal, you name what. And this school in Malur, girls only school, came second in that trial. So that kind of proves the enormous potential talent our rural schools have, and also it kind of proved that this infrastructure can quickly bridge and enable real talent that is available anywhere. And as long as we can enable them and play this enablement role, such talents can be clearly showcased very quickly. Padhu, if you can bring up the next slide, please. So this was the achievement by the Malur girls. They came second, as I mentioned earlier, and the first was probably in Bangladesh. And this trial ran for 2 to 3 months, and the Malur came with flying colors. Next slide. And then in the next phase, during the second wave, we also started deploying in large number of schools, as I mentioned. And some of the pictures you see are from those teacher workshops, which we hired a system integration partner, as Wadi mentioned in ODiSI roles. We hired a company called Connecting the Dots, who are based out of HSR layout in Bangalore, and they took the lead in training the teachers based on our learnings during our initial POC. We conducted multiple teacher training camps, one for Malur Taluk and one for the Hunsur Taluk. And then we distributed tabs for the schools and also laptops for the teachers, trained them on how they need to use the Google Classroom, and also train them how students can receive it, and then how they can participate and how they can use the digital platform. So many times the confusion is, as soon as you say digital and online, the picture is on one end you have a teacher, and on the other end the students are listening to lectures and lessons and then participating in digital. We soon realized that is not the primary working model, though that is a valid model, but that cannot be the primary model. So when we say digital infrastructure, we are using it to deliver lessons in whatever way, because again, with the new age thinking and NEP coming in and other things, many of the things, the learning methodology itself needs to adapt for a new world, where students get content and lessons when they want, as many times as they want. So this is the infrastructure, the ODiSI infrastructure enables that kind of thought, where students can take and participate in lessons, download lessons, watch lessons, answer assignments, and then prove that learning outcomes are really happening, and that it is the progress is being made, right? So again, 5 schools in Malur Taluk and 6 schools in Hunsur Taluk is what we have covered. Next slide, please. This is the list of all the schools that we have deployed ODiSI, and at the end of this stage, we plan to cover nearly 2,000 plus students across all the schools, and be able to share the full results. And today I will be sharing some part of the results in terms of what the outcome looks like. So I'll give a quick demo in terms of what you can see and what the government agencies can see from their perspective. So here is the dashboard that you can see, which is the outcome during the academic year. So overall, 176 students participated. They cleared and completed nearly 143 assignments. And overall participation rate was around 56 or 57%. Let me switch to this academic year, current ongoing results. It's taking a little bit of time. Okay. Right now, there are 916 students across all the schools. They have completed 1,121 assignments with a participation rate of 37%. And this changes on a daily basis. So you get near real time. This dashboard is updated twice in a day. So you get all the things, this data being pulled from Google Class using Google APIs, and this is all stored on Google Cloud Platform. And you can slice and dice it and see how different schools are performing. Again, these are the schools. So suppose I want to look at only this school. This is Chikkakuntur school. And then if I want to see how they have performed till date, you see that they have 113 students and their participation rate is 68%. So, and then you can look at different classes. You can look at across subjects. There are multiple ways and slice and dice it, and then you can derive all this analytics sitting in one place. There are also a lot of other dashboards, interesting things, which subjects are doing very well, which subject is doing poor. So it looks like overall, in case of Chikkakuntur, social science seems to be doing very, very well, followed by science. Lagging behind in the last part is probably Hindi. So these are some of the capabilities in terms of, this is the dashboard capability that we have already built and working, and this can be scaled to as many schools as we want as we roll out, and data will start flowing from day one as soon as it is deployed. So this is one aspect of learning outcomes. The other part is also device telemetry, how the devices are performing, what is happening on the devices, are they being used at all, are they sitting in cold storage? So we are using something called a scale fusion technology, which is for mobile device telemetry. So as you can see on the left-hand side, you can do very advanced kind of device management. You can push updates, you can control, you can find out which, if there are any security breaches, what is this available storage on each of these devices, how is the battery life, is data being used, when was the last time the device was connected, and a whole amount of diagnostics and information and management mechanisms to be able to control the devices. Now I will go back to the deck. If I need to stop sharing. Yeah. So let us go to the slide which shows, not this, next one. Yeah. So what does the road look ahead in terms of Madhu, this is in presentation mode. Can you make it full screen? Yeah, right now we are in a at scale kind of proof of concept where we are deploying to 11 schools. As I mentioned, when this is done in the next 2 to 3 months, you saw a number close to 1,000. We need to go to 2,000 students when we enroll additional grades in the same schools. I think that we will do it very, very easily. And then once this is done, we will be ready for a large scale pilot. That means we want to deploy the same solution in 100 to 500 schools and cover 50,000 students. And probably we can start doing this at the end of this academic year and start enrolling, and the whole next year, these schools can participate in this large scale pilot. So once that is done, we want to just open up this reference architecture framework to the entire world. So anybody can use it, anybody can deploy it. Governments can do it at much, much larger scale, because again, language is not a barrier. It can be used in multiple languages of instruction, and with multiple system integrators and different hardware combinations, different learning management systems. It need not be limited to Google, but all of it will pipe through, and then through a single dashboard, and then based on access controls and other things, each state state education department can have its own view, and then its set of KPIs, key performance indices, and monitor and track them, and be able to review and take course corrections as required. So with that, I will stop and then hand it over back to Vijay, and see if there are any questions all of us can answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Sudhir. That was very, very heartening to see how comprehensively this has been done. Although it's a pilot, the best part that I saw here is that you got the measurement. Without measurement, nothing can be known, and there is nothing that can be improved, which is the first thing you guys have focused on, and it's very comprehensive. Thank you for enlightening us on actually what is the value people are perceiving, in this kind of a digital infrastructure. So with that, I would like to bring all the panelists on. I have a few questions, a few from the audience I have received otherwise as well. I want to ask you on a few things. The first question that I have is, we do physical infrastructure and we will continue to do that. We are going to continue our mission of building schools while alongside we are going to also do this digital infrastructure and roll this out as the roadmap Sudhir you shared with us. The first question that has come to mind is this digital infrastructure only limited to those OSAT schools, or is this open to everybody? Vadi, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, so this is a very valid question. I think we have been asked many times. Absolutely not. I think the digital, again, wherever there is an infrastructure need, I think this digital infrastructure need is everywhere. We go to schools that require this infrastructure. That means anywhere we see a digital gap, we are going to address that. So this is absolutely open to any school. And as Sudhir hinted at the end, this is an open architecture. We don't own it. We want to go and every child, we find that education is every child's birthright. It cannot be equated to the amount of wealth they have or their parents have. So this has to be open to every child. Our idea, and the Google Classroom is free, by the way. So why not? There is nothing that prevents us from doing it to any other school.
So the next question that I have, right, is in terms of the funding and the challenges and the longevity of this, so because it's a no-brainer for during pandemic for people to think that digital infrastructure is necessary. But over the, I clearly saw that Vadi and Paddu, both of you mentioned that so this is a very important piece of the puzzle in education, like having a proper digital infrastructure for the future of education, even in rural India. So, Paddu, do you have any thoughts in terms of what does it require? Like, so for example, I know that, so if we have to build a school, somebody told us, okay, 4 classrooms needs to be built in this particular area. You have a clear idea of, okay, this is a $50,000 project, this is a $70,000 project, right? But for this kind of a digital infrastructure, do you have any idea, Paddu, so in terms of what does it take, so to kind of put 1 year of this digital infrastructure in one school?
I think it's a very good question. So some of the topic Vadi touched base on the bundle as an overall cost. I think in the pilot version, I think we are really working on not necessarily into the cost optimization in any way, but at least we want the entire solution to work the way we want it to work in a way. So that way, we will have to figure it out how exactly the bundle cost is going to come across in the subscription model as we move forward. So Vadi and Sudhir, probably you may have a little bit of an idea. I know the pilot version costing may be a little different from the production version costing. Obviously, there will be a lot more other parameters comes into the picture. But let me defer it to Vadi or Sudhir, either one, just to talk about what is it bundle cost that pilot that we are seeing, and what is our projection for the production cost point.
So for this 11 schools, we are planning at the current cost is because there's a lot of development, the system integration coming on board. It's also new to them, and we haven't gotten into the subscription model yet. There is a lot of procurement at a very what we call it as not at a scale buying, because our supply chain management hasn't been very streamlined. So right now it's about 70 plus lakhs is what is for this 11 schools. But going forward, we have come to a target where per child, we are looking at about 3,000 to 4,000 rupees per year as the target cost to be spent on these children. And this is very doable because a lot of government programs today are in this mode where they are given cycle, they are given all sorts of assistance. It's very possible. And it is very measurable also for government to spend. Once it is spent, they exactly know whether 6 months down the line that children has improved or not. It is not like, you give a cycle, we don't know where it goes. So government can have that assurance. So we are looking at between 3 to 4,000. There's large scope for optimization in this pipeline. And we have already gotten a lot of feedback from manufacturers saying that, hey, how can we kind of customize this, all this kind of things at scale, etc. So we are hoping to get down to that level so that for government, it is an easy cookie cutter design to implement it.
Thank you. Thank you. So I know we are kind of reaching the top of the hour, so I want to also summarize in terms of what our audience can actually, how they can participate. Before that, there's only one quick question that I want to ask you, Sudhir. So you've been on the ground, you've been talking to schools, you've been interacting with the governments. What is the parent feedback? So what do you hear from parents? So in these areas.
Yeah. So there is that's a kind of a tricky this thing, especially because we use not only our own devices, we also encourage children to use if any devices available at home. So that kind of puts children and parents in this kind of conflict, and parents complaining that what have you done? You have told our kids to go online and now they are demanding devices. So there is a lot of coaching, mentoring that needs to be done for teachers, students, as well as parents. We tell them that this is when they come to school and we give the devices, this is all kind of controlled. And also we set some guidelines in terms of what is it that they do. We coach and tell the parents as well. Because outside OSAT, we have seen some horrible situations where children have committed suicide because they didn't have a device and other things, all this peer pressure. So Vijay, what you bring in is very, very valid. We are very cognizant of responsible device handling and device management. It is not just throwing devices at children and then let things develop the way it is supposed to. We need to be very, very responsible in which when we deploy ODiSI, and then we coach, and that's where again coaching, mentoring, what are the cons, what are the pros, we need to mentor them, and we are already doing that in a very active manner. There is still a lot of learning that is happening, and a playbook is something which is going to be deliverable at the end of this phase, and there will be guidelines, and we are involving child psychologists in this. It's just not us doing whatever we are doing. We are getting their feedback as well, and then so this is a wholesome, complete exercise. It's just not a device technology play. There is human aspects, there are economics, and eventually learning outcome in a good, repeatable, scalable way that we need to target. I hope I answered. I think.
No. That's important because so people will have questions as to. I mean, in the urban areas, it's a no-brainer, right? You're on a Zoom call attending a classroom, no-brainer. Everybody knows that.
Right.
What is the parent perception in these rural areas is something which a lot of people will be curious to know. So, and you have first-hand information. I thought it's nice to get your feedback on that. With that, so one last thing, so I'm assuming that this does not mean, I'm sure, like, this question also must have come from parents. This does not mean I'm going to hold the kid back, not going to school, but only do digital, right? So answer yes. I presume the answer is yes, but I want to
absolutely not. I mean, they are supposed to be in school. Again, as I said, this is not for a pandemic. Let me be very, very clear. This has to be the original issue of digital divide, which was already there. People had not figured out how to actually, make it. We have now come up with a standard, whether it is pandemic or regular learning. This is how it's going to be, because it is day-to-day learning, and it's well integrated in their pedagogy.
Yeah. Let me add to that quickly. So when they use digital, what we have also observed is rural children have very nice, great motor skills. We don't want to kill their writing skills. Okay, so this digital infrastructure enables them to continue with their traditional means of writing answers, long description answers. It's not replacing their books with tablets. The tablets acts as like a tool, additional tool to upload some of the things. Some of the long description assignments they complete is label the parts of the human digestive system. So that is a question that is given from as part written on the board or made as an assignment, and children do the writing on their book, and at the end of the day when they complete the assignment, they click a picture and upload it to the Google Classroom. So that way we are not compromising on their written skills, speaking skills, because learning is not about just reading and repeating, right? It is all about social interactivity, participation, learning different skills. So there is even, there are assignments on physical education. There are assignments on music. If you go and look at some of the things, and then teachers are doing it by themselves. It's not like we taught them or explained to them.
Yeah.
So there is scope for a lot of innovations, and teachers are there could be a school tomorrow who have a adult tinkering lab where they could do a project, a science project, or there could be another girls school where they teach sewing, and then that is being used through this digital infrastructure. So this is kind of like what you said, this is open, and it can, sky is the limit.
Thank you. I know. Yeah, I'm pretty sure, like, this is going to be a very important tool in the long-term learning perspective for all children. And no one should be deprived of this particular important, powerful infrastructure. And thank you all for doing that. I also want to, before we wind up, I also want to highlight in terms of what can we do, right? What can people who are attending this, as well as who were interested in OSAT, what can they do for, how can they participate in this? As I mentioned, there are 44 projects completed, there are 13 underway, there are 16 that are vetted. We have a very, very rigorous process of vetting these projects, all the way from the buy-in from the parents and the teachers and the local authorities and so on, and identifying and deploying every dollar that has been raised into a proper use. So we have so with that, like, so people can continue to sort of contribute. There are several people who have come forward to own up schools, directly sponsor a school construction in one of their favorite areas, pick your schools that have been vetted in your region. Or there are people who have come together, so as friends or various groups, or including from companies, right? To sponsor schools. And we are really looking forward to more people coming together individually, as groups, as part of their companies, to come and sponsor. The second thing is, if it's possible, lots of companies have got CSR programs. In India, it is mandatory, government mandated thing that 2% of the profits should actually be contributed towards CSR programs. And OSAT is a certified CSR organization. So you could influence your organizations to add OSAT as a potential beneficiary for such CSR programs. And there is a corporate match that happens in several organizations here in the US as well as in India. So any contribution that you make can be multiplied 1 times, 2 times, depending on what the corporate policies are. So please spread this word, come forward with your contribution. You can participate in the physical infrastructure, you can participate in the digital infrastructure, or you can even volunteer at trying to spread this message. There is plenty of work, as Padhu had put up, so the number of schools, a staggering number of over 10,000 schools need this. The physical infrastructure is so poor. So endless amount of things can be done. It's very difficult to find organizations that are completely dedicated and building and taking responsibility for doing this kind of hard work. So please spread this word, come forward, be part of this, and let's make the education and primary education in India a reality, and make every children get that opportunity. So thank you, gentlemen, for participating in this. The amount of work all of you have put in kind of creating this, thinking about this, going ahead and implementing this pilot, measuring the success, and really putting this out for everyone to see why this is important, the digital infrastructure, how this can be done, and what is the proof of the success of such programs, and why this is needed for the future. was fantastically covered by every one of you. There were several other questions. Unfortunately, because of the time, I could not ask. We will probably have this conversation going, and in future, we will come up with more webinars and panel discussions at this topic. Thank you, everybody, for joining. I hope this was informational, and you will participate in OSAT programs in future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.